All right, hello there, and welcome to Plugging Along, the a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. There could be others. Last time on Plugging Along, we added the ability to move our Soliloquy tracker and turn it on and off in the Minstrel Buffs options panel, and to show which tier of inner strength is active. I'll review all that just in case you weren't here last time. But today we're going to try to make it work for other players in a fellowship, not just for ourselves. How do we count for who's in the fellowship when we join? How do we track when people are added or removed from the fellowship? And possibly even wider than that, what happens if you're in a raid and there's more people in your party? As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. Oh, and the Redhead sees the closed captions. I finally fixed the bug on that. So if you are interested in closed captions, check out the little CC button in the bottom right of your screen. It will be hilariously wrong sometimes. So that's the price we pay for live captions. Okay. Oh, and thank you, Mubot. Cool. So what are we talking about? In case you have not been here, I frequently play as a minstrel, and sometimes am called upon to heal during instances. And one of the things I noticed recently was I was having a really hard time tracking how many Soliloquies of Spirits were on the tank specifically, but just my party members in general. And also, because I am spec'd that way, I have the inner strength buff from the very end of the Watcher of Resolve line, which can stack up to 3 times, each time giving a 1% physical and tactical mitigation. I was very interested in knowing how much of that the tank had. Did they have 1, 2, or 3 of those? And yeah, I could click and I could see that they had the icon, but it wasn't obvious which tier it was. And it was very easy for me to lose track of during a really busy or long fight. So we've been recently trying to do Rift and Heligrod over on the Treebeard server, and even though the landscape difficulty doesn't apply, it's still a little challenging to do these things, especially as we ramp up to harder tiers. And so I was looking for a plug-in solution to my lack of minstrel prowess for which of my fellowship members, or maybe even raid members, had 1, 2, or 3 Soliloquy of Spirits, and tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 of inner strength. So as we can see, this is working for the player ourselves. We can see how many Soliloquy of Spirits and inner strengths we have. Now, I don't know how this will behave if there are multiple minstrels. I assume that combined from all minstrels, you can only have up to 3 Soliloquy of Spirits and only up to 1 inner strength. But I haven't actually tried that. I think that makes sense in my head that you just get that no matter which minstrels are casting it. But that's a thing to watch out for, is could there be more than 3? Could there be 4 or 6 or 10 if you have a bunch of minstrels? But for now, this is great. And as I play with it more, I'll see where those edge cases maybe have some false assumptions. Also, at the very end of last time, we did get the tier tracking, the 1, 2, or 3, and we can see the little dots above the inner strength here are just representing which tier we are on. Now we're just drawing 3 little white controls there so we could make the space between them bigger if we felt like it wasn't obvious how much space there was there. So let's jump into the code now that we've refreshed our memory of what on earth are we doing here. Let's see. And I have my standard channel here so we can pay attention to things that plugins say. But it's underneath the plugin along text. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start by opening up the documents, Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, and I'm going to go into Minstrel Buffs. And now we've started a little to-do file here in the Minstrel Buffs directory. And it occurred to me just before I was getting started here, sorry about that. It occurred to me just before we got started here that I have not been very good about committing our progress into a source control for Minstrel Buffs changes here. And part of that is just I don't know what I'm doing so far, and it hasn't really coalesced into a unified, this will definitely work solution. And so I've been a little hesitant to be committing changes that I'm not even sure are going to make it into the finished product. But I shouldn't let that stop me. I should be, anytime I'm making something work, I should be going ahead and committing it, even if it's not going to be the final version. Because it'd be a shame if I broke something and couldn't get it back to working state. Ah, well. Okay. So, a thing I noticed while I was playing around this week was that I forgot to use the saved value for is the window visible or not. So if we come back in here and open the plugin manager, we added this checkbox to hide or show that window. But that value, it is saved to the file, but it is not used when we load back in. And so that window is always on, and it can get out of sync if you say no, log out, log in, and we're back. And also, there is a debug text here that I feel like doesn't need to be in there. So we're going to go ahead and remove debug output. Whoops. And we can see it looks like that just to help us find the text. Okay, and then of course the next thing we want to do is add in fellowship members. So let's do these two real quick, a bit of a warm up, and then we'll move on to party. And I'm going to use the term party very heavily this stream because that's what the Lua API talks about when you're looking at party membership. I think that Lua thinks of party membership as either fellowship or raid. They are in your group somehow. But that's something I'm going to be digging into because I haven't done much with the party API yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up. The option window is probably where that value is being used. So let's go ahead and find Soliloquy. Oh, great. Oh, well, it looks like I forgot to fix the comment here. So we're going to call that Soliloquy visibility. And, well, it looks like we are using the saved settings. So maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's not getting saved. So let me go ahead and, well, let's move that chat window somewhere better. Okay, let me go ahead and unload, make sure we have a save file, and load it back in. Oh, uncheck it first. Oh, okay. Now I realize what the problem was. The checkbox is correct, but the state of the window is not. Okay, that should be easy enough to fix. So, we want to pay attention to this, not just in populating the checkbox, but also in the Soliloquy window itself. All right, so set visible, we want to actually set that to self.settings get Soliloquy window used. So we want to go straight to there instead. So if I unload and reload, okay, well that didn't do quite what I was hoping. So let me go back into my save file so I can double check that the value is being persisted. All right, minstrel buff plugin data. So we can see Soliloquy window used is false. Excellent. And it still is. If we load, we can see, if we swap it, we can see that goes to true. Excellent. Nothing surprising about that. Okay, so let's see, set visible. Let's see if there's any other, oh, there we go. There's an extra window set visible at the bottom here. I'm not sure why that is, but that was overriding the previous call that was based on the setting. So if I unload, oh, there we go. Now, well, that's exciting. Well, that confuses me. Let's go ahead and use that set visible in place of the other one. So when I say use it, it's not getting visible. That's exciting. Okay, we're going to look into that. Okay. We should probably use this helper function UI hidden anyway instead of bypassing it. So we're going to go ahead and say self UI hidden and get that used. And just to be sure, how are we using this? That's probably fine. Yes, party from double clicks. That is an excellent reference to a song. Okay, that is just weirding me out. Why is that getting out of sync still? So, in order to tell what's going on, we do have a self.used. What is self.used being set by? Self.used is true, and if that is, okay, we should actually pay attention to what we did last time. All right, so if we go ahead and self-used doesn't necessarily equal true, it uses the settings that we pulled in to start. Excellent. Now we can go ahead and make use of the UI hidden. In fact, we should probably do that pretty much anywhere, just in case we're in the F12 state of hiding the UI. So we should do self UI hidden used. Now, in this case, that's not a big deal because you would not be able to click this box if the UI was hidden, but just as a general practice kind of thing. Okay, so I think, assuming there weren't any bugs with that, yes, now we're in sync. Perfect. Oh, neat. I have some fellowship members down there. That'll be very handy. Hello, fellowship members, some of whom are AFK. Okay, so we have fixed that first bug, and if I were doing, if I were properly using source control all along, I would now commit that little bug fix as its own little commit. That being said, I will probably just do it at the end of this stream, maybe off stream, and break things apart into sensible commits. Okay, so we did that. Remove that debug output. Oh, right, new S value. What is that? That's probably in the option window. New S value. No, I don't see it here, but we're going to use our recursive search, which hopefully your text editor of choice has. We're just going to search in the documents, Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, minstrel buffs folder. Great. Okay, so we can see that in the settings file, new S value, and the existing S value. I forgot to remove those debug statements. Okay, so why do I close the plugin manager? I use it all the time. If we unload and reload, then if we're clicking that, it is correctly showing and hiding the UI, and we can see the debug output from last time is gone. Great. That's a great starting point. Okay. In fact, let me pause for a moment and grab a drink and make sure I'm not ignoring anyone in chat. Okay. Looks like chat is all caught up and I am hydrated. Okay, so party members. Let's take a look at the Lotro API. So you can download this from Lotro Interface. There's also a version in the Lotro Interface wiki. And what we're going to look for is under Turbine Gameplay. And specifically, the party class is either your fellowship or your tribe, depending on your alliance, it says. Neat. I don't see something in here called raid, so let's see what this has. All right, we have some functions. We can get the assist target. We can get the assist target count, so we can get assist number 1, 2, 3, that kind of thing. We can get the leader. We can get members. We can see how many members there are. Is assist target and is member. Okay. And we have access to some events. Assist target added, assist target removed, leader changed, member added, member removed. Okay, neat. Now, what I don't know is, do we know about... Oh, you can get the party a player as a membership. Interesting. Oh, and if you're not currently in a party, you're going to get nil. Okay. So, adding in party members. When the plugin starts, check if, let's see, we probably want to look at local player and get party. Yeah, check if local player get party is not nil. If not, then make a row for each player that is not us. So I think it'll be easiest to use us as we're always there, and then if we're in a party to check for everyone else. That seems like it will be easier. Maybe I'm wrong, but the other option is to either we're not in a party and it's us, or we are in a party and then just do everyone. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll look at the code. Or if not in party, then do play self. If in party, do all of party. Add all of party. Maybe it makes more sense to split it into two pieces like that. I'm not sure. But if we are in a party, if in party, or even if we're not, can we tell if someone's added to our party if we're not in one in the first place? Let's see. Interesting. You can know when your rate has changed. Well, what is that? Okay. Let's see. Party changed when the party of the player has changed. Okay. So we could use that to tell if we are in a party, perhaps? We should find out. What does party change do? And that's in local player. And so one of the things that can be helpful to do is go ahead and hook up some event handlers that just have some debug statements and just play around and see what happens. So for instance, in the Soliloquy tracker window, we might use that as the central place to do some of this. Okay, so how do we get our local player? Well, in the local player, there is get instance. So self.localPlayer equals turbine.something. We're in the turbine.gameplay namespace, and local player get instance. Well, that's interesting. Are we already doing that somewhere and I have forgotten about it? We are. Great. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and call that self.player to save that off. I think that'll be a little bit easier. Okay. So here, I want to go ahead and subscribe to some of those callbacks. So if I do a self.player dot, oh, what is it? Anything that's interesting. Let's see. Basement, no, don't care about morale or power. In combat changes, nope. Is link dead? Is voice active? Level change, max morale. Name changed. When would that happen? Can you change your name in-game? Party changed. Let's go ahead and subscribe to party changed. And we're going to make an anonymous function that receives sender and args, I'm guessing. If we dig on into the party changed, we can see, yep, it's a standard event. So party changed. And in that, we're just going to do turbine.shell.writeLine just to show that we are in that function. That happened. Mostly, I'm just trying to get a sense of what's going on. Hello, Professor SOA, or Soak. Shadows of Angmar K. Well, hello. Okay, so what else can we do? We are going to know when our party is changed. I'm curious about this raid changed. So we're going to go ahead and self.player.raid changed. We're going to set that to be an anonymous function that takes a sender and an arguments. And again, in fact, I could do a lot of copy pasting here. We're going to go ahead and just write out that we're in there. Okay, great. And anything else? No, I think that's a start. So let's go ahead and unload, reload, great. Just to make sure that I haven't broken anything, great, that still works. Okay, so first of all, let's go ahead and disband this party. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and invite my friend Monstein. Monstein. Great. Okay, we can see self.player.party changed, you have joined a fellowship. Now what's interesting to me is I did not see that for your fellowship has been disbanded. But I'm hopeful that if we are in a party, then maybe we'll be able to use these events to track whether the party still exists or not. Okay, so what else do we have? Anything else with the word party? Get party. Okay, so when party changed is called, we could then use get party to find that party. Okay, that's good. Now what happens if I invite Morganite? Fellowship invite. Okay. Self.party changed has not been called, so that was not a party change. Okay. What if I were to convert to raid? Oh, well, that was exciting. I got multiple party changed. Maybe I should make a note here. All right, to do. Okay. We saw player.party changed. Okay, so when joining a fellowship, called. When leaving a fellowship, are not called. When converting a fellowship to a raid, party changed called twice, which is very exciting. Knowing that that could be called multiple times, we should build into it some level of caution. All right, so if I drag myself over here, my party has changed. All right, so moving from one raid group to another, that was called once. Okay, what if someone else has moved into mine? Fascinating. Okay, let me just reset here. Okay, so if Munson is moved into mine, interesting. Moving someone else into my raid group, player.party change called twice, and then moving someone back out, moving someone from my raid group to another, that's called once. That's pretty wild. I would not have guessed that from the documentation. Okay, anything else I could do? Well, I can move myself to another group. Okay. Moving from one group to another called once. Okay. If I move myself back here, we can see also just called once. So that seems to be pretty consistent. If I move over here, just called once, great. What if someone else has moved? Interesting. Moving someone from another raid group to a different raid group called once. Okay, so maybe when it was called twice, it was getting called because they moved out of their old and moved into mine? Maybe. Okay. What about this? That gets called once, this, that gets called once. But dragging them into mine gets called twice. Okay, wild. So definitely whatever code we're writing should be tolerant to being called multiple times right in a row. And we should be able to tell if we've already done the work or not and just stop doing the work. If we care about that. If we care. Okay, so now that we have a party changed, again, what happens if I leave the party? If I, let's see, if I leave the party, I do not get a notification. And unfortunately, because I didn't disband, they're still in the group, but hopefully they'll sort themselves out. So we do not get told when we're no longer in a fellowship with that method. But it might be that one of the party events does tell us that information, or at least helps us with that. For instance, if all the members are removed, or if get party is null, that kind of thing. Okay. Now, I have used mini raid, for instance, and I'm pretty sure it knows how this information. So that's one thing we could do, is we could start digging into other plugins that seem to handle raids and fellowships and get a sense of how they do it. But I don't mind digging into this a little bit just for my own edification. So let's start with if our party has changed, then if self.player.get party. Actually, let's save that off. Local self.party equals self.player get party. I think that's right. Let's see. Get party. There we go. Okay. And we know that'll be nil if we're not in a party. So if self.party is not equal to nil, then we are in a party or a fellowship. Now, a lot of these terms, party, might be generic because they support both fellowships and raids, but they might also be generic because they support both Lotro and other, at the time, Turbine properties, like Dungeons & Dragons Online. And so if it's not in a Lotro namespace, it might be intended to be kind of generic and usable across multiple games. And so I don't want to make too many assumptions based off the naming, just because something is named away. But that being said, we have like Gambit, and that's a very Warden-specific thing, I think. Haven't played a Warden very much. Okay, so if the party is not nil, then let's do stuff with the party. Now, I'm going to be bad. I'm not going to clean up my event subscriptions very much. So in final code, we might want to be more robust about adding or removing event handlers. That being said, let's go ahead and self.party.member added. We're going to go ahead and add a handler for that. And again, this is just going to be function sender args. Oh, but if self.party.member added does not equal nil, right, that we need to be careful about doing this multiple times, then that equals a new anonymous function. It's getting very nested. At some point, these should not be anonymous functions. But again, this is just about getting some test code in here to see what's happening. Okay. We're going to go ahead and add self.party.member added. Okay. And same thing for member removed. In fact, I can just copy a lot of this. And then member removed, member removed, member removed. There we go. Now, do I care about the leader change? Not right now. I could care about that just because if the leader is in your, if the leader is in your fellowship, then they always show up as the second person. So if I wanted to attempt to match the order in our list to the order in the fellowship display, I'd probably care about that more. The way Miniraids solves that seems to be pretty good and also supports custom reordering of the buttons. But that's putting the reordering before the UI. Okay, and then raid changed. I don't know what raid changed is meant to tell us because I don't see a raid item here. So we're going to hold off on that. Mostly I'm just concerned about getting my fellowship set up, and then we can kind of move on to, well, what about everyone? Okay. Now, a thing that I'm curious about is what is getting called for, say, member added? What is args? So we have the event sender. That's probably the party. But the event arguments I'm curious about. Now, do we have any sort of way to dump tables out? We might. Let's see. General functions. I did put a dump function here. So let's go ahead and do a member added, and let's go ahead and dump those arguments and just see if there's anything interesting in there. We'll do that in both of those. And we'll assume that the sender is just the object. And we'll do a dump on those arguments too while we're at it. Great. So that gives us maybe more information. So I'm going to go ahead and unload, reload, and then I'm going to go ahead and invite Monstein back into my fellowship. I want to see what happens when I do that. Oh, Monstein's already a fellowship. With me? Nay. Nope. Try again. Yeah, they were in a raid. Yeah, just disband.
It's on the other side of the screen.
I had played a trick. I had left them in like fellowship number 3 in the raid, and by default, my screen doesn't have enough space to really show 24 people with the standard fellowship layout, which is one of the reasons I really like mini raid. It's a much more compact way of viewing 23 other people. All right, let's go ahead and see if Monstein will join my fellowship. Okay, great. Invalid member function call. Always delightful. All right, so what does that tell us? That tells us that Soliloquy tracker window Lua line 41. Ah, yes, of course. I didn't actually use the colon notation to call the function, and it all went downhill from there. So let's go ahead and unload and reload. And we'll go ahead and just disband that and re-invite Monstein to our fellowship. Great. So what do we see? Player party changed. There's nothing in the args. That's useful to know. All right, party change do. Args are empty table. And you have joined a fellowship. Monstein has joined your fellowship. Okay. Now let's go ahead and invite Morganite. And that will do nothing. Okay. I was really expecting a member added or a member removed trigger there. So I'm going to go ahead and fellowship dismiss. Interesting. Well, perhaps I have fundamentally misunderstood everything. All right. So a real question. Oh, bye-bye, Monstein.
Oh, I thought you wanted to.
That's okay. Okay, so a real question is party nil? So let's go ahead and write an else statement. It says turbine.shell.writeLine party is nil. Just to tell us, because it could be nothing is happening here because party is nil. We'll unload that, we'll reload that, we'll get Monstein back into the fellowship. Okay, well, we didn't see a nil there. And, I forgot while I'm doing this, else. We should go ahead and say turbine.shell.writeLine. All right, so, oh, of course, I was supposed to check those functions to see if they were nil, and I just copied the previous logic for checking if party was not nil. So I was only setting the function if the function had been set, which it never had been. How silly. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and reinvite Monstain back into the fellowship. Excellent. And then if we invite Morganite here back into the fellowship, then ideally we will see some output. Yes, we get a self.party.member added, and that's a table player equals something. So that is a player. Okay, so that is what does. We should probably write down some of our discoveries. This is party member added. Okay. What does party member added to? Args are a player. And a player is just a class here. So we could probably call get name on that. So I say probably, let's go ahead and do it. So member added, and let's go ahead and dump our, no, first we'll go ahead and do args get name. Now, this could be wrong. Maybe that is an array of players, but I'm going to guess that it's just a player being added. So we're going to go ahead and unload, come back in, and I'm going to disband. Oh, am I? No, I'll just kick Morganite out. Dismiss. But I'm sorry, Morganite. Let's get you back in here. Oh, it's my party changed. I wonder. Let's go ahead and disband this fellowship. Obviously, this code is just test code. When I first log in, or the plugin starts, we need to also check if that party exists. We're only really, and we're going to invite Morganite. We're just checking here during that first party changed. Okay, attempt to call get method a nil value, or get name a nil value. Okay, that's exciting, and that tells us that my first assumption is okay, maybe not. Oh, it does seem like maybe it is an array of players, because we do see that brace notation there. We see a comma there. So this could be a one element or table of party members. All right, that's cool. So instead of that hack there to get a name, we could do a for each style thing. Now, I have trouble remembering how to do for eaches in Lua. I get confused with every other language that has its own way of doing it. But I know that the minstrel effects window, or I should say, where is it? Minstrel buff window? Where's the window? Well, when in doubt, what is the plugin loading? Main. Great. So, when in doubt, let's go see how this does. Oh, great. There's a for I equals 1. Actually, I want to do a for each style. Wow, there's all sorts of stuff here. Okay, well, when in doubt, there is plenty of Lua explanation online. So, Lua for each entry in a table specifically. Is this going to be just what I looked at? Okay, neat. Okay, so we can go ahead and double check. And if you want to modify the contents, you have to actually modify the table. You can iterate. Yeah, okay. So the pairs do great. That looks great. Okay, so when a member is added, let's see about doing a for key value in pairs args do end. And then I think just the value, yeah? So we'll go ahead and do a turbine.shell.writeLine name, and then maybe the get name. Now this is a bit of a guess, a bit of conjecture based off of the player equals something, an object. So let's see if that is it all right, and let's see if the code is written correctly first. Okay, it at least parses. I'm going to go ahead and disband this, and then pull up Monstain and send them an invite. Now, Little Red Head's being very nice and managing all of those 3 instances of Lotro so that I do not have them running while trying to stream. So I do appreciate that. Let's see. Shout out Little Red Head 42. Thanks. Excellent. So what do we have? We have, well, let's go ahead and invite one more. Morganite. Great. Okay, so we can see that that guess was correct. The player key had a value that did indeed have a function called getName, so I think it's safe to assume that is a player object. And we can see the name is Morganite. Great, that's actually going to be really useful because this plugin wants to display the name of who is being buffed. Or being daft, as the captioner would say. Yeah, close enough. Okay, so, did we learn something? Args are a table of one player. Neat. And then member removed. We could do something similar. Let's go ahead and kick Morganite out. Dismiss. Great, we can see member removed. Okay, you dismissed Morganite from the fellowship. Darn right. No. But we could probably do the same thing because we see member removed also looks like, I forgot my hyphens, but also looks like an array. So if we did the same thing, and again, this is just test code to figure out what's going on. If I was doing the same thing over and over, I'd want to do some extracting out into a function, not just copy paste it over and over in here. If I constantly need to sort out the names of who's being added and removed, make a function do that. But for right now, this is just playing around a little bit. All right, so disband that fellowship. And very shortly, I'm going to do something about what happens if you're in a fellowship when the plugin loads, because obviously that is something that happens quite a lot. And Morganite, let's get you in here and let's see what happens. Okay, so we have Morganite. If we dismiss Morganite, fellowship dismiss, great. We can see that when we iterate through that table of players, one players, then that was Morganite. So everything is as we expect with the argument of that function. One of these days, I feel like annotating some of these functions a little bit, but then I remember some of them already have been annotated over on the Lotro interface side of things. So if I was to come into the Lotro API reference and come on in to the gameplay, and then that's the party, and, oh, okay, so these have not been annotated. These are a little out of date then. Local player, what about that? Party changed. Neat, okay. Well, the documentation version I have is of a newer version, but I do feel like sometimes I could annotate it even more. So we could go and for the party member added, that could be useful to say, hey, this is not just a table, it is a table of player objects that you can iterate through like this. I think about that and then I forget, but if anyone else has a desire. Baz asks, has anyone told him that party functionality is broken? Not as such, Baz. By what do you mean broken? Because I've certainly seen other plugins like MiniRaid able to know when people are added or removed and to know who's in your party and indeed who's in your raid. In fact, I keep talking about MiniRaid. Let's go ahead and install it. Well, you perhaps have an answer. So come on into the Lotro plugin compendium and add in mini raid. Great. And then we can refresh, mini raid, load. Now, mini raid, in fact, if I go ahead and add in fellowship, add Morganite, and fellowship, add turquoise. Baz says, if you convert to a raid, the party object will break. Only reloading will allow you to have correct data. Otherwise, you risk a client crash by accessing data. Well, that's really useful to know. That seems like something that mini raid definitely has handled. That being said, we did notice already that there is a, let's see, have we done it in here? There is a raid changed function. So the calling of that function would suggest that you're in a raid mode. Now, when you say reloading, do you mean reloading the plugin or just re-accessing the party object? Reloading the plugin. Well, I have to say, I have not seen that experience with mini raid. Mini raid seems to, raid change event would suggest that. Yeah, so I have been using mini raid for a while, and unless it self reloads when you do a raid, and I just haven't noticed it, it certainly seems to handle conversion from fellowship to raid just fine. So whatever it is doing is working, and we would do well to emulate it because it's pretty cool. In fact, one of the things I really like about it is your ability to drag people around to have a custom ordering in case you don't like the default. Raid options. Let's go ahead and enable that button. And then, I just discovered recently, which really helped my enjoyment of this, is you can set it to either fill in from the bottom up or from the top down. And that was really neat because I like reading it from top down. Let's see. But I don't remember where it was. Vertical layout, there we go. Vertical layout, top. And horizontal layout, center, left, right. Cool. And so it does a pretty good job of tracking who's in your fellowship, the order they are, and matching it with what's over here. Okay, so yeah, I haven't looked into how mini raid handles all of this party stuff. Mostly, this was an excuse today to kind of learn what is available through the API myself, and not just copy what another plugin has already done. But the fact that this plugin is able to do so much with Fellowship and Raid, and do it successfully and do it without crashing, that suggests to me that it is doable, even if how you do it is a little tricky. Does that kind of jive with your expectation, Baz? And while you have a chance to answer that, okay, so what have we seen? We've seen the raid changed function. Did we track what happens? Raid changed. Now that I mention it, I don't remember. Let's go ahead and, just for kicks, let's play around with the raid. So if I go ahead and convert to raid, then I get a player party changed. If I go ahead and move myself, I did not get that. Okay, so maybe the raid changed. Did we ever actually see it getting called back? We get a party change there. Interesting. That says, I don't use mini raids, so I don't know what they do. Just saying, before you dive into rabbit hole disappointment, you cannot figure out in what group a player is either. That's okay. I don't need to know what group a player is in. Just like with mini raid, you can kind of guess that people fill in. But if they don't, mini raid provides the ability to drag things around, and I think that's a fine solution. If you want the order of your stuff, and I'm focusing on fellowship, but raid's something that I have in the back of my head. Then if you can just reorder things just by dragging them around, then it doesn't really matter if the plugin doesn't get it exactly right. Oh, yeah. Jaeger F says, did the Yule Festival start? And we will thank you for answering that. Thursday! That's very exciting. Little Redhead will probably be streaming all about Yule stuff on her Thursday stream. Baz says, the problem you have now, if you were to invite another person, they would not get added to the party object. Okay. Well, like I said, somehow the mini raid is able to do it, and so that is a light in the darkness, because mini raid is able to do it and also get access to the player objects. So it's not just a chat monitoring thing, because they also have access to your health, to your power, and all the things you would expect from it being a player object. So that is very promising. You assume they're reloading. Well, you know what? Now that I have it installed, we could do a quick little peek and see if, unfortunately, more complicated plugins like this tend to be harder to just glance at casually. But that being said, if we go ahead and look for the phrase mini raid reload, then maybe we can see it being used. Well, there we go. We have an update function. We have a convert to raid. Interesting. Okay. So you've joined a chat room for your raid. Raid chat is now available. Excellent. So they're using a chat notification to let them know to go ahead and just convert over to a raid. Neat. Okay. Well, that's easy enough to take advantage of. And then what else? Oh, cool. Okay. So they're also tracking things like your fellowship has been disbanded, your raid has been disbanded, you've been dismissed from the fellowship, and they're using all of those to figure out if how to track all this stuff. That's fascinating. Now, all of that is a challenge that I don't have to worry about right now, but that's neat to know that this is working very successfully for the mini raid plugin. Cool. Okay. Well, for now, let's focus on fellowship and then extrapolate later to raid. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and disband this raid so that we reset to fellowship mode. I'm going to go ahead and re-invite Monstain. Because other thing I would like to do is go ahead and see more than just myself in this soliloquy window. Bad says, I am not entirely sure how the crash worked again, but if you appoint a RAT to someone running a broken party object, it is CTD. I assume CTD is crash to desktop, but an RAT. I'm not sure what RAT is in this context. If you point a radius as target to someone running a broken party object, is crash to desktop. Well, that's exciting. We'll try not to enable that particular option then. Like I said, being able to see how mini-raid handles all of that. And in this case, yeah, they're monitoring chat messages and then figuring out if they need to reload the plugin. Excellent. So we'll be able to hopefully find some inspiration in how to deal with those edge cases. It also explains actually a question that I've had for a while. So this was a fun little diversion, is mini-raid does come with its own mini-raid reload, which you can trigger manually. You can come in here and reload it. And I did not understand why it had that specifically, other than just sometimes things get out of sync and why not. But it's really nice to know that that's a necessary part of overcoming some edge cases in the Lua API plugin, that it just can make use of that. And one of the side effects of that is it does have to be visible in the list of plugins. I don't think there's a way to say to Lotro, yeah, this plugin exists and it can be called by other plugins, but don't show it to the user. User gets to see. So that actually does answer that question for me as to why that's there. That's really awesome. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay. So, two things. When we are first coming up, we would like to know who's in our party. And then when the party changes, we would like to know what's going on. But, yeah, the member added and member removed functions, we want to hook those up right away if we're in a party. Otherwise, when we first get a party changed, then we could go ahead and take a look at who's in there. That says, sadly, the party object has many broken features. Well, in this case, all I'm looking for is, really, I'm just looking for the tank, and I wouldn't mind if I could just be like, yeah, just select this one, but I figured why not go ahead and support everyone in the fellowship. That says, it is nice, however, you can use mini-raid as a sort of cheat sheet. In essence, it is a very straightforward plugin in its function. Yeah, I use it all the time when I'm doing more than just like one or two people. Like I said, I find its interface very easy to kind of get a heads-up view for everyone's health, which as a minstrel I occasionally am concerned about. Okay, so in the constructor, where all of this stuff is happening, let's go ahead and start writing some actual code that we're going to use. So first of all, self party, let's go ahead and assign that. And if self.party is not equal to nil, then we want to go ahead and add a row for each existing party member. But we also want to set up event handlers. Not really callback functions, but event handlers, yeah. For the member added and member removed. Cool. So we want to go ahead and, again, we're going to set up the event handlers, member added, but we're going to go ahead and set up some external functions here. Function, Soliloquy tracker window. We're going to go ahead and, yeah, we'll just go ahead and do member added. And we'll take the args. Yeah, we'll take them both. And same thing with the member removed. Member removed. Great. And so we can go ahead and just pass the call off to here. Self, great. And of course, we don't need to have all that debug information. Now, I see this all the time in plugin development where this is all on one line. For me, this is stretching about how much I can kind of absorb and read of it. So right now, I'm trying to encourage myself to just break it up here and make it look nicely indented like a function. I suspect if I stared at the one-line version enough, it would be fine. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and encourage myself to make it a little bit more vertically readable. And we're going to do the same, the same little bit here where we're going to say, let me know when member removed, and we'll pass that off to ourself. Okay, the setting up a row for each existing party member is the, it's important to go ahead and say except ourself. Except ourself. Because we already have a row and we don't need two. Okay, so it just occurred to me that my in-game window is nowhere visible. We're going to go ahead and move it on over here to the right, since I'm not tracking any quests. Or maybe up here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so just to convince ourselves we haven't broken anything, we can still see that there. And make that less wide. Okay, so adding the row, that's going to be something. Let's go ahead and see. Do we need anything else here? Oh yes, if the party has changed, then we want to go ahead and kind of do the same thing. In fact, let's go ahead and abstract that out too. Soliloquy tracker, window, party changed, sender args. And we expect that to happen because party is nil. So if self.party is not nil, then let's go ahead and just return for now. That may be something we need to address. But if it's not, let's see. Or do we want to re-grab the player object? Oh, sorry, the party object. Well, I actually expect the party to be the sender. So, okay, we'll revisit that. For right now, let's actually go ahead and spit something out to chat, just so we're aware that this has happened and need to do something about it. So, turbine.shell.writeLine. We're going to go ahead and say skipping party change handler. Party is not nil. And if I ever see that, then I will know, well, should do something about that. Okay, in the meantime, let's go ahead and bring that stuff on down, and we can go ahead and do a self party changed. Great. Also, party changed has senders and args. I don't think I need nil here. I'm not actually paying attention to sender args as it is. Okay. But I do need to register for the party changed event. So, same thing here. We're going to go ahead and say self party changed sender args. And then if args, no, sender does not equal, no, or do I just call it from the player again? Yeah, that works. In fact, yes, that'll work even better. Save off the party object. And then party change, we can go ahead and just call that. And if the party object is null, and that is fine. If self.party equals nil, then we're done. Great. Then we won't try to iterate through the party, then we won't try to set callback functions on a nil. Okay, so we have, let's go ahead. If we kill these outputs, is there anything else in here that we care about? You know, it might not hurt to check for that. Are these nil or not? So if self.party, no, the functions. So if self.party dot member added equals nil, then go ahead and set that up. And again, at some point we'll want to come in and possibly remove those, but it's entirely possible the party object kind of cleans itself up. So we'll check in on that. All right, so and if the member removed is equal to null, then we'll go ahead and set that function as well. Okay, so we've got that done, we've got that, we've got those checks out of here. Excellent. And the self.party column. Okay. Now the rate changed. I still haven't seen where that does anything. It's entirely possible it doesn't. And since we're not interested in RAID stuff right now anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just remove that. And we'll come back. Okay, so self.player.party change equals this. And we're going to go ahead and call it anyway. In fact, let's go ahead and call it after we set that handler. So the only thing we're missing right now is that row for each existing party member. Now, ideally, that's going to be pretty easy. What do? When we make a row, we make a new Soliloquy tracker row. We set the parent to self.window, and that's it. We're just passing the player object, and it takes everything else. It takes control of everything else. Now, the one thing to note here is that the window probably isn't self-sizing. And so if we add a row, we'll probably want to make that window taller. As it is, can we tell how tall it is? Soliloquy window thinks the drag bar thinks it's that tall, which is pretty tall. It's entirely possible that the set size, maybe it's not that tall. That's okay. We're going to go ahead and iterate through for key value. And just pulling up that party, we want to, we have a member count and a get member index. Excellent. In that case, we'll not iterate through that way. We're going to go ahead and iterate through using the standard index kind of thing here. So it's going to look more like this. For I equals 1 to something, and in this case, it's going to be the self.party get member count. And we're going to go ahead and same thing that we did before. Row equals minstrelbuffs.minstrelbuffwindow.soliloquy tracker row. And we're going to, instead of passing self.player, we're going to pass self.party get member with I. And now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and set row set parent to be self.window, same as before. And finally, we'll probably want self.window set, self.window set height to be self.window get height plus row get height. Something like that. Make it taller by the amount that the row was. Now, is this going to work? I have no idea, but it might work, and it's worth giving it a try. So I'm going to go ahead and unload everything, and I'm just going to go ahead and load minstrel buffs. And, oh, that's exciting. Let's go ahead and see. Okay, well, I will say it is not doing exactly what I was hoping, but it's not breaking, and so that's progress. Okay, so one thing, we're not using a list view or anything that's sort of controlling how these things are. And so we should probably set the position of this thing. Row set position. It can be over 0, but it does need to be the height. Of the previous row. So local row height equals row get height. And then we'll just go ahead and set that to, with the assumption that each row is the same height, because we've designed it that way. In that case, we can just go ahead and use the height of the row in the window height adjustment as well. Okay, neat. Well, we can see that this is partially working. We can see that the row up here is working, but unfortunately, we're also seeing some of those effects over on Monstein as well. Now, this is quite possibly because I have written something poorly, or we are stumbling into one of the edge cases of party stuff. So let's see what we have. We have the party get member. That should be returning a player. Great. Oh, of course. I forgot to exclude myself. If self.party, I should go ahead and just save that off. Local party member equals self party get member I. And then we can go ahead and use party member later. So if party member dot get colon get name equals self dot player get name, and unfortunately I don't think that's really a continue statement, so we'll just say if it's not, then do the rest of this. And okay, so let's exclude ourselves and let's come back in and see what we see with that. Okay, excellent. So at the first, we don't see the duplicate stuff over with Monstein. Now, second question, do we see something with Monstein? No. Not yet. Okay, so Monstein is not seeing all of the effects, either from a party issue, or because there's still something that's player specific in here. Now, let's see if we can dig into this a little bit. First of all, we're dealing with a row that should be abstracting everything off. Let's come in here and let's search for player. Okay, self.player equals stuff. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and add a turbine.shell.writeLine. Adding row for, and we'll do a player get name. I want to see what's going on there. Okay, we can see adding row for Titleist, adding row for Monstein. That's good. Okay. Now, we also have the effect list. When we are adding callbacks, we are only adding a callback for effect changed callback. And one thing I wanted to do was to kind of check and say, do we want to coalesce all three of those into a single callback? Or would it be better to at least be able to tell which one was which, even if we, at the end of the day, handle them all the same way? So same thing. I want to come in here and let's see, turbine.shell.writeLine, and that's effect added for, and we're just going to go ahead and say self, or we can even say player get name. And we're just going to make that same change to each of these. Just to have a better sense of what's going on. All right. And that's obviously not effect added. We're going to go ahead and do effect removed and effect cleared. Great. So let's come back in here a moment. And just for myself, just to see what that looks like. It does not. Why doesn't it? Oh, because I didn't actually change which function was being called. Excellent. That must have been very confusing for it. Okay, so I'm going to give it a few seconds and see what's going on here. Now I'm curious about the effect cleared. Like, at what point do effects get cleared besides the player dying, for instance? Yeah, at that point all your effects are cleared. But does it happen anywhere else? Session play, maybe. All right, we have an effect removed for tideless. Effect removed for tideless. We should see another one coming up for inner strength. Yep. And the final one for Soliloquy of Spirit. If I'd been a clearer thinker, I might have even said the name of the effect that was being removed, but that's okay. Okay, effect removed there. Now, can we see the same stuff over on Munstein? That's the exciting question. Now, we see effect added for Munstein, effect removed, effect added, removed. Nice. And then for tideless as well. All right, so my lack of a name here is getting the better of me. So one thing we can do is effects added. Let's go ahead and do a, we'll do a dump of, a dump of the args. Well, that's fascinating. It has an index. Is the sender an effect or the effect list? Okay. Well, local index equals args index. And then local effect equals effect list. And I believe it is get effect, but we'll just double check here. We have an effect list. Oh, Baz says, I haven't really found a function for effect cleared. Yeah, I'll have to play around and see when does that happen. All right, so we have a get. Okay, effect list get index. And then local, let's see, we have an effect. We have a get name. Great. Name equals effect get name. And then we can go ahead and turbine.shell.writeLine that as well. But then we'll probably combine it all together into a single row. Interesting. Of course. Sorry, I was just noticing that Munstein has dissonance, but of course Munstein does. Munstein's a minstrel. All the better for being in a band. Okay, so we have we're going to make a quick little function here. So look, we tracker row, get effect name from sender args. Do I need that? No. Index. Great. And we can do the same thing there. So index. Oh, no. And we don't even need that. Effect list. Ooh. But do I have effect list? I do not. That almost doesn't seem worth it at this point, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and local name equals get effect name. We're passing in the effect list and the args index, or maybe args dot index. I like that better. Okay. And effect, we'll go ahead and say player name added, and we'll go ahead and do the effect name. And then we don't need that or that or that or that. Perfect. And then we're going to go ahead and do a very similar thing. Removed. Actually, now that I look at that, I'm not sure we can do that for removed because at that point it's no longer in the effect list. So, effect list, effect removed. Let's go ahead and dump some stuff. Check the args to remove. Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and turbine.shell.writeLine. We're going to go ahead and dump the sender. And in a separate one, we'll go ahead and dump the args. And we'll be able to track those. So, sender and args. Exactly what I was thinking, Baz. Let's check and see what they give us. Okay, so Munstein, let's go ahead and pop that on there. Effect removed. Oh my goodness. So the sender is effect cleared. Is it? Sure. And there's a function. Two functions. Effect added. Oh, I'm getting the effect. That's what it is. So, excellent. There's more people down there. Oh, that's fun. Attempt to call a global. Of course. I will need to do that. Let's fix that while we're at it. Great. Okay, so am I seeing the effect removed? The sender is all of that, which has cleared, added, and removed. So the sender is the effect list. And the args is an effect. Okay, so we can go ahead and make a little function. We'll go ahead and say local effect equals args dot effect handy, and then we have the name. Cool. So we can go ahead and local name equals self get removed effect name, and we're just going to send that args over, and then same thing. Player name removed that thing. Okay, let's get a sense of what that looks like. All right, Monstein added distance, added inner strength. Monstein removed Soliloquy of Spirit. Tideless added inspiring cries and call downs. Reduced induction times and snowball. Well, that's exciting. If I do another one, we can see added soliloquy, removed soliloquy, added soliloquy. This is fascinating and suggests that there is some inconsistency to what things we see on other players. That being said, what's going on with this? Baz says, welcome to the headache of the effect system of the API. Yeah, now, the good news is we didn't actually need the effect list. The effect list was a really interesting way to do this. But we also saw how to capture the information of who we were putting this on just via the combat chat. And since we know it always lasts for 45 seconds if it's Soliloquy of Spirit, and it always lasts for 30 seconds if it's Inner Strength, and we know roughly what tier inner strength should be, assuming that our clock matches the server. We could always have an issue there. That was one of the reasons I was hoping we could use effects, was the effect system, if it is correct, should be able to tell us what tier we're looking at. Whereas if we just have a timer and it hits 0 and we say, okay, that must have cleared out, we could be just slightly off from the server and think we're off on tier 0 land when we're actually still on tier 3 for just another second. And so that was a thing, was, if we can use the effect system, great. Now, we can still use the effect system for ourselves. We could have a chat system for others, an effect system for ourselves, and that would be fine. A little, extra work maybe to maintain them both. But so that's maybe where we are right now. Now, the cool thing is, if I go ahead and cast Soliloquy of Spirit on Mondstaine, I do, in the chat logs, see these things coming in. But I also see them being removed, which is exciting. And so all thing we could do is just bypass that for the other player. So, real question, do I still have the chat log stuff? Baz suggests checking the IDs on the effects of other players. I might find it interesting. Well, I'm all for checking on things. Okay, so what do we have? When we're looking at an effect, we can get a unique ID for the effect. Sounds good? So let's just modify these functions to go ahead and return the ID as well. Return name, effect, get ID. These functions I don't think are going to live very long, so it's okay to not have local variables there. Okay, and where did I put, aha, name ID, name ID, okay, so we've gone ahead and asked to know about the IDs as well. So we'll go ahead and try it out. Okay, so I am seeing numbers in the 5,000 to 6,000s for someone else and in the million-ish for me. So if I come on into a handy dandy calculator and take a look at what that looks like, just out of curiosity. All right, 6033. Now, when I look at IDs like that, it's fun to break them apart into hexadecimal and just to see, are there any patterns that I should be aware of? I don't actually see anything like that. That just looks like some increasing IDs. So let's take a look. Mondstaine, if I go ahead and Soliloquy of Spirit. Distance is still, okay, so that distance is consistent. Awesome. When we're adding and removing, interesting. So, Soliloquy of Spirit, 39, 37, 37, 39. Okay, so it seems like effects have IDs, and those IDs stay with the effect while the effect lasts. That's a sort of a first shot impression that I have of those. Now, if there's something more to that, I'm not sure if I might be missing it, but that's the first thing I see. And if I were to break this fellowship and then invite Mondstaine back, then do those numbers start over? Oh, of course, I don't handle those calls yet. I'll restart the plugin. Okay. Well, Munstein still has numbers in the 5,000, 6,000s. Those don't look any particularly different. Yeah, okay. So it seems like players might have ranges of effects. I'd be curious to see if that restarts. Is that meant to be globally unique? Does everyone just get their own slice of 1,000 numbers for effects, and that's probably good enough? And if so, yeah, how does the server allocate those? Okay. I do find it interesting, but I don't find it illuminating for right now. Oh, and apparently I have some sort of error message coming in. Am I not? Okay, I do. Okay, Soliloquy Tracker row 23. My goodness. Attempt to index affect a local. Oh, okay. Well, if effect equals nil, return nil, comma 0. Can do. Then return and. Okay. Neat. Okay. So, this is why I didn't. Oh, okay. Baz says the reason for that error is the effect was applied on a player when the plugin's not loaded, so it'll be a null reference for the API. Well, that makes sense. Which is funny because Munstein does have dissonance, and dissonance would have been applied as soon as they logged in. But perhaps that's handled differently. It's not really a buff, not in the traditional sense. Okay. Let's go ahead and open up a file that's been in my downloads called not in use chat logger. So this was the chat logger, which was to say we are going to be applying a benefit with Soliloquy of Spirit on so and so. Devaz says this is also not actually removed; it's a fake remove. Yeah, it's funny, and I'm not sure why it's being said it's removed. But then again, I'm not sure why most of these are being said that they're removed. As you said, there are some peculiarities here. So we have a chat logger, which we can use to tell that Soliloquy of Spirit has been applied to someone. And since we have timers associated with these elements, here I'll just do it on myself, where it does work okay. Since we have timers on these elements, we know if we think inner strength has expired or should be upped again. So, oh, that's fun. Why am I getting more errors? Yeah, okay, that's solved. Yeah, Baz, I do get. I have gotten the impression that this has been this way for a while. That is true. So, all the more impressive that so many people have made so many awesome plugins with what they are working with. So, what I'm thinking is use the chat plugin to know that we have cast it. We don't care about anything other than when it happened. And if inner strength is still running, bump it up to the next tier if it's not already 3. If it's at 3, just reset the timer. Reset the timer either way. And then increase the tier if we can. So, in a way, that's almost easier. And raises the interesting question of should we bother with pre-populating boxes for everyone in your party? Should we just pop a box up there whether or not someone is in your party or not, and then get rid of it when everything goes away? Like if I pop a random heal over down on Turquoise here who is not in my party, should I get a box for that? Is that useful? Probably not, since the main focus of this is running in instances. But it's a question that I've thought about is it useful to go ahead and show me, I cast this on someone for a reason, for instance, an NPC in a dungeon. What's her name in the end of The Rift, where you're like, oh, maybe we should keep her alive or else everyone dies. It was one of those things where it would have been very nice to pop up a little box showing me her inner strength state. Anyhow, all that being said, let's go ahead and reinstate the chat logger in some fashion. So, to do, adding in party members. Note, party effects are not consistently correct for our point of view. Switch to using chat logger for soliloquy detection. Okay, and with that, we can take inspiration from mini raid for how to handle party additions / removals, or just create a row for anyone we cast soliloquy on. And hide it when everything is done. That's actually an easier way than dealing with a full raid, but if the point was to be able to eventually click on one of these rows to target someone and then start doing it, then we lose that that particular aspect. Now, in a 24-person raid, I don't know that it's necessarily useful to be trying to keep this up on everyone. There's a cooldown of... That's the wrong one. There's a cooldown of 1.5 seconds. There's also the induction time. Well, not the induction, but the evoking time. So 1001, 1002, 1003, about 3 seconds. And so if inner strength has a cooldown of 30 seconds, then you can really realistically get 10 or fewer people. Oh, Glathriel, thank you so much, Little Redhead. Yes, Glathriel is important. So you could do maybe 10 people if you're doing nothing else. And in general, you're usually doing something else. So, you know, I don't know that it's useful to hold 24 people up there if the majority of them are not going to have Soliloquy of Spirits and Inner Strength. So now that I'm reconsidering it, maybe, since I'm going to be using this in conjunction with Mini Raid, and I'm the only person I have to satisfy right now, maybe I use Mini Raid to show me who's where, and then this just tells me who I have cast things on recently. Now, it could go ahead and keep things up, like only clear out the list when we leave combat, and then it's just me. That might be a fine solution, because if in a random combat in a dungeon, Heligrod, Rift, whatever, since we're on Treebeard, in that case, maybe I do throw things at random people, and if I do that, maybe I want to keep doing it that combat, boss fight or something, let's keep everyone alive. And when that fight is over, let's just reset and assume I only care about myself and the tanks. So that might be a path to go. I'm kind of hypothesizing here because we're running up to 20 minutes before the hour, and I'm not convinced I am going to get a lot more progress done on everything. So I'm kind of planning out what we're going to do today and what we're going to do next time. Okay, so that's an interesting thought. So we're going to switch the chat logger for other people. We're going to go ahead and maybe not even worry about fellowship adding and deleting. Don't show other people, show ourselves, and show anyone else we've done stuff on recently. Maybe. So that might be a start. And then we can kind of ignore all the complications of fellowship and raid as just being a little bit beyond our purview. We're not a full-blown mini raid substitute after all, not even close. And yeah, I like that. It'll simplify things dramatically. When we see that we've done a soliloquy, we'll either already have a row for that, or we'll create a new row. So that does mean, Baz points out, only showing active bus would be much more space efficient and scalable. Yeah, that's the other thing, is I was already trying to come up with, what does this look like if there's 12 people in the list, if there's 24 people in the list? Obviously, it would have to change. And the configuration manager for MiniRaid is complicated because there's so much to do. For anyone who hasn't seen this, if you go into the options and you want to see what it looks like with 24 people, it looks like this, right? Like, and this is more or less what I see if I'm healing in the middle of a dungeon. I don't get to see a lot of the a lot of the scenery, because no matter where I put this thing, it's going to fill up a reasonable amount of space, right? I guess I could put over my skills. I don't need those. Now, a lot of time I'm just in a 6 or 12 person instance, so it's not nearly this egregious. But every once in a while, Bombadil last year when we were trying to do tier 3 Heligrad, it looked a lot like that. Anyhow, so yeah, I have become more and more convinced that that's the right way to go for right now, and then that'll simplify things and at the same time leave us open to making different changes in the future. Baz thinks you kind of need different settings for 6, 12, and 12 plus. Yeah. MiniRaid does an admirable job of supporting those different configurations. I don't want to worry about it, so I'm gonna do the easy route. Okay, so this means we don't care about fellowship, raid, / etc. Just track who we've cast. So sung Soliloquy of Spirit at. Okay, I really like that. So if that's the case, we have a chat logger, and we'll want to go ahead and still do that in the Soliloquy tracker window. Or will we? Because we're still, this is not an add callback kind of thing. So we might want to check the main chat logger. Oh, chat.received. Okay. Well, I am curious if anything else is already doing a chat.received before I go ahead and overwrite that callback. So let's go ahead and recursively search in the Minster Buffs folder. There is none. Really? Do I have case sensitive? All right, I do not. Neat. So the chat logger, let's go ahead and paste that on in here. All right, so turbine.chat.received equals a function. Now, I am hesitating because I'm a little concerned about bearing the chat.received equals here, because if anyone else wants to modify Minster Buffs and do something else with chat, then this is in the wrong place for that. And so instead, what I think I want is a centralized place in main. And here, we're going to go ahead and say Minster Buff main and Soliloquy window. We're going to go ahead and just pass that on. So self.soliloquy window, we'll call it chat received, and we'll go ahead and call sender args. Great. And so anyone else who has a component that wants to know about chat messages, they can just add it here as well. And then multiple components can be processing the same messages. Now, you could build a system where each component kind of says, yes, I've got it. Don't stop processing, event handling style. Or or you can just let each of them take a crack at it. Maybe multiple components want to use the same message multiple ways. Since we only have the one component, it doesn't really matter here. All right, so here is our function. We can remove one level of indentation, and we're still looking for those player combat. And here are the things we're looking at. Here's the pattern matching string that we have. So we have the message, get raw text. Do we still have the functionality for that? Yes, that's in general functions. Excellent. That'll strip any color information out of there. And then player name, that gets the capture group here. And then if the player name does not equal null, then we can go ahead and add soliloquy player name. Great. Except this function was a thing that existed and it doesn't anymore. Exactly. Call some function x. So find call a function that adds a soliloquy to an existing row or creates a new row. Also, a thing I just thought about is I would like to know, how do you pass through selection of a player? That is, when I click on Tidlos or Monstein here in the mini raid, it actually selects that player, and that sounds great. I would love to do that, and so I'm going to look very quickly at the player methods and just see, is there a way to select? Okay, I'm not saying select this player. I suspect because the player, the party UI is one of the few things you can override with plugins in that way, that they're doing a special thing with that. So I'm guessing there's a turbine.ui something that they're playing around with. Let's see, anything that I see real fast? I do not. That's okay. So, how do you pass through selection of a player? Is it possible? The answer is probably not. Baz says, what do you mean? Hopefully, what I just said makes sense, but just this, where I click on the plugin and it passes through the idea that I want to select that player. I'd love for that to be the case, where I click on Tidlos, click on Monstein. Entity control. Oh, fascinating. Let's take a look. Well, we have entity. Entity control. Oh, neat. It is Lotro. A control for writing standard entity selection and context-sensitive menu support. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save that off in my notes here. No, not in a brand new file. Cool. So we'll go ahead and save off that little note. Awesome. So that's something to look for. And what was the other one that I was just thinking about? Whoops. Could have sworn I had Control-C over there. All right, Bez says, just set entity player object espez. Possibly easy peasy. Neat. Okay, thanks. I will look into that. So there was something else that I was contemplating. I'm sure it'll come back to me. So we're going to create a call function that adds a soliloquy to an existing row or creates a new row, which means we need to track these rows. If you start playing around with targets and entity controls, beware of memory leaks as well as performance loss. Well, fair enough. That was more of a nice to have than a must have. So I will be aware of such a thing. Oh, cool. I could get timestamps. Heck yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something to be aware of. And that's just a nice to have, where I think it'd be neat to be able to click on the tie to those box here and then just go straight into here, as opposed to clicking some other place. And this is just a heads-up display. That being said, the heads-up display will be 90% of what I want. It'd be just neat to be able to click and also do. But absolutely, that brings us back to the problem of having to remove the entity and all sorts of things. So that's just a nice to have. Nice to have. Okay, we'll mark that. Also, we should switch to storing the rows in a list control or something so that we don't have to care where things are. Because that's going to get more complicated if these rows drop out because they're empty, or at the end of combat we just nix everything that's empty, or some combination of that. Then I don't want to have to worry about where these things are and shifting everything around. And if a list control style thing can fix that for me, then that would be lovely. I haven't played around with lists very much myself, but I hear they're great. Oh, invalid target. Right. They're not in my fellowship. Cool. All right. So that's a lot of cool possibilities, and definitely some fun exploration into some of the possibilities and some of the limitations of the fellowship, party list and the effects list on party members who are not ourselves. So I think that is a pretty solid path forward, is fully switch to using this chat received. Make sure that we have the ability to store off these rows, or at least references to the rows. So I'm thinking name and then index in the list, or name and then a reference that is also in the list, something like that. Because right now these rows are just getting created and then we forget about them, and we don't want that. So that'll be a change to come on in, and then once we have that, it should be pretty straightforward for a row to say, hey, all my timers are done, you can get rid of me, and for us to see when we have exited combat which of the rows are done, for instance. Or if we exit combat, just clear all of them. Maybe we only care about this in combat. It's hard to tell. I think I care about tanks having this outside of combat, but other than creating a control to be like, select which characters you want to always see, I don't have a good solution for that. Okay, well, we're just about out of time here today. I'm going to take a drink of water, and if you have any final comments, questions, suggestions, etc., let's pop them into chat real fast. So, I'd say I'm going to have water, but I've gone through all of them. That's okay. I'll go get some more here in a moment. Okay, I'm going to close down that. Main is going to have that. Oh, we do need to call that, of course. Very cool. All right. I'm just trying to remember what's going on in the window here and what things we're just going to strip out because they would let us down sort of a dead-end path and made things overcomplicated. Okay, so old logic that we won't do anymore. But let's go ahead and move that up. Okay. Nice. Okay, we've got all that sorted out. So that's where we're going to go next time, is taking the chat messages that we know work. We saw that at the very beginning, and using that to populate windows, create windows if they're not there, and let them expire when all of the timers are gone and when we leave combat. Okay. Yeah, we've got that. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to say that was really cool. And this is one of those things where sometimes you just spend an hour or two digging into a possible solution, and it just turns out to not be the solution. And I would encourage you not to consider that time lost or wasted. Like, I have definitely learned a lot about how the API presents partyship information, what some of the things we can do with it are, what some of the things we can't do with it. And so all of that's useful information, and hopefully it's been useful for a non-zero number of you as well. But regardless, I can take that knowledge and move forward and kind of craft this plugin towards the strengths of the API and just veer away from some of the weaknesses. And so I think next week we're going to see a much more dramatic change in the visual state of the plugin than we do this time. Baz seems to concur. Wasting time on dead ends is secretly half the fun. Absolutely. Or at least, regardless of where you derive your fun, I don't view it as a waste. Now, if you spend every time you code like that and you never make any progress, you may wish to seek out other avenues. But an occasional dead end diversion is fine. It's all part of the process. It's all part of learning how to do this thing that we do. Neat. Okay. Well, that is all we're going to cover today, such as it is. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of Lotro plugins. I do hope to see you next week, and until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.